We're live. Tim, I love your new, what is it, intro face thing. Cool.
It's the old titles with a little bit pushed on before, because it's actually purely practical, because it takes a while to go live, so you never quite know where the start is. So that's why I put that little bit. And then I created that little face thing for some other purpose, and I thought I'll shove that in.
It looks good. Yay. Anyway. Hello, April. Thank you for being with us. Hello, everyone watching. And Tim, thank you for doing that. For those who don't know, Tim does all our producing and marketing and all the behind the scenes stuff. And I always like to give him a little shout out because he does a lot of work that people may not realize. Meanwhile, I show up. April, thank you for being here with us. I'm so excited to chat with you. We've gotten to know each other a little bit offline, and you are just a delight. Will you introduce yourself to our audience who may not know you yet?
Great, no problem. My name is Meyer. I am the founder of, I called it a ministry now because I'm a minister in training, an interfaith minister in training. I'm currently in interfaith seminary, but I am the founder of a ministry I call Creativity is Spirituality. And it's really helping people see the liberation that could be found by seeing those two things as the same thing.
I love the word creativity, and you've combined it with spirituality, which is just a beautiful thing. Will you explain that a little bit further? What do you mean by creativity? And how can the two go hand in hand? What does that look like?
I define creativity as expression of emotions. And creativity is something that, you know, a lot of people think of it as creating something that's tangible, but not all the time, because music is one of those things that can be heard, but it can't be held, you know, and dance is something that we can watch, but we can't keep it forever. So I think that any form of expression, any form of emotional expression is creativity. And I can't remember the second part of your question, but that's how I define creativity.
Well, I was wondering, and you can answer it differently, or because I mean, you know, we can go a million ways with this, but how can you combine both creativity and spirituality? And maybe it looks like healing. Maybe it looks like just processing our world. How does that go hand in hand?
I think that emotions, and I'm really kind of borrowing from the work of Eckhart Tolle in saying this, but when it comes to knowing our own personal deep truth with a capital T, our emotions are the best way, the best signposts for that, the best indicators for that. And sometimes we have a tendency in as humans and in the way that society trains us is to ignore those emotions and to ignore and to even suppress them and store them into our bodies. And I found that creativity has been kind of co-opted by to be something that is only valid if it's productive or it makes money, which is not to me what creativity is. Creativity is the release of emotions, no matter what those emotions are, joy, happiness, all the way down to the more darker emotions like anger and frustration, sadness. But we tend to, in our society, commodify a lot of that stuff. And if we release our bounds to that commodification and we allow ourselves to reclaim what is rightfully ours, which is the right to express ourselves and however we see fit, and remove any desired outcome from the equation too, like making sure that it's palatable, beautiful, marketable, that it serves merely the purpose of expressing emotion and not to entertain or delight others. It could be a great side effect, but if we look at creativity as something that is purely and wholly selfish, sacredly selfish, then we can release ourselves from the bounds of many patriarchal institutions such as religion and capitalist government.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Oh, sorry.
I'll let you. Yeah.
You said you're a ministry. So is this Christian based, or are you like more from the general kind of? You were just using that as I say because it's in the UK. Ministry sounds very Christian, so that's
and in the US it does too. Absolutely. Yeah. And I really kind of feel very strongly about reclaiming that word because as an interfaith minister in training, I am, I'm in service to everybody. I'm in service to all religions and spiritual backgrounds. So when I, as a minister, I am earning, the right to do that right now in school. Once I am officially ordained, I will have the right to call any work that I do in the spiritual world a ministry. And I really feel like that's a very holy and sacred word that belongs to the spiritual community at large.
Yeah.
Creativity, going back to this, and ministry. How do you combine those two, and how are you going to combine those two? Some of the reasons I'm asking these questions is because I know a little bit of your answers, and it makes me so excited to know the path that you're on. And so, how do you combine creativity with ministry? And tell us a little bit of the path and journey you've been on, April.
Yeah, I really would have to share my own story with that because the ways that creativity and spirituality are intertwined are extremely subjective and personal. Yeah. And my own journey with that involves expressive arts. I'm a trained expressive arts practitioner in a method known as creative alchemy, which was a method devised by Melissa D'Antoni about 14 years ago. She's actually a trained psychologist who left psychology to create this method. And it involves really treating your body and the way that you can physically emote onto a canvas with paint, with just your body, not paintbrushes or anything like that. Your fingers, whatever, fingers, hands, whole arms, a lot of singing, crying, screaming, throwing things like paint, basically. And it allows you to kind of feel this. I hesitate to use this word, but it truly is the best word for it. This like shamanic sense of divine unity, like unity with the divine, and it creates a tremendous sense of peace. It also allows you to release stored emotions. And that is that's kind of like the core of my offering and what I do with clients. And it is also my own personal entrance into this work. It, for me, is about, I've also done a lot of ecstatic dance, which is just free-form dancing with a bunch of people, ideally. I know that has been inaccessible for most of us for the last 2 years or so. But before COVID, long before COVID, I was involved in the ecstatic dance community. Of just feeling this, really, it comes down to embodiment a lot, like really truly embodying spiritual energy and being able to express that.
So presumably you've not always been like this creative minister. You went through a journey to become that. So can you talk a little bit, because I'm just looking at some of your Instagram feed. I mean, you've got a lot of interesting backstory, so to speak. So however much you want to share of that, like how much of that backstory, as much as you want to share, and also like how did you get from where you were to becoming this creative minister, so to speak?
Yes, I really feel Like I wouldn't even be sitting here if Christelle and I hadn't connected through the deconstruction community online. And we share a lot of similar sentiments in that regard, because I come from a background. I come from a very strict fundamentalist evangelical Christian background. I was brought up and raised in evangelical American Christianity, Church of Christ to be specific, which if you're familiar with Nadia Bolz-Weber, she was as well. And I feel like Nadia's work was very much a portal to my own claiming of being really somebody that could be a spiritual worker. If it weren't for Nadia and being able to see her, a former Church of Christ woman, by the way, women aren't allowed to be ministers. Yeah. If it weren't for Nadia and being able to see Nadia do what she's doing, which is minister to marginalized people in society, such as addicts, alcoholics, LGBTQA. She's really quite, she's the founder of a church called the All Saints and Sinners, a congregation in Denver, Colorado. So that's more of her story, but it's important. It was really important for me to see somebody. I got to meet her and I got to see her speak, and I've read her books, and it was an enormous part of my journey. And I met her through an organization called New Story, or New Story Festival, which is founded by Gareth Higgins, a very well-known Irish peacemaker, peace activist. And Gareth Higgins, I worked for him for a while, and through my associations with New Story, I found that there were just really radical new ways for spirituality to be expressed. And at the same time, I was being trained in this expressive arts method that I mentioned earlier. I experienced many spiritual awakenings throughout my life. My father was somebody I'd like to call like a spiritual philosopher. He's not a very religious person. He actually left the church when I was very young, which was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to our family. As a result, we have all had to come to realize that some of us more recently than others in our family, that our spirituality is something that had to be reclaimed from a hierarchical, patriarchal institution. So I do that through creativity. And I know that my own family does that through their own ways. Like volunteerism is a really popular one. And in my family, just being there for other people. It's not something I haven't done. It's just not my particularly spiritual portal like it is for other members of my family. So that, I hope, gives you a little bit more backstory. And I've done a lot of different things as far as my creative backstory. Yeah. I am definitely a multi-hyphenate. I have been a professional musician, would love to be again. I draw, I paint, I write. I'm currently working on my first novel, or actually I should say finishing the first novel I've ever attempted to finish is probably a more accurate way of putting that. There's really just, and as you know, I've done expressive dance, ecstatic dance. So there's really no form of creativity I'm not willing to try unless it hurts myself or other people. And I'm just completely unafraid of making a total hiney of myself. And I think that my spiritual journey has made that possible for me. I really don't care about being a perfectionist or looking good to other people or being really outcome based. I really am completely unafraid of making a fool out of myself. And I think that's a tremendous liberation.
So, Tim, did you have a question?
No.
So let's say I'm going to give you an example of a person who might be watching. Let's say I'm watching and I've never heard about this before, but I'm very intrigued. I am intrigued about what you're talking about. I'm intrigued about the creative process, and I'm in a world of chaos, and I just am looking for healing. Mm-hmm. How might what you do help me?
I think that the core of my work is that I empower people to reclaim parts of themselves, parts of their spirit that have been commodified. So, Christelle, let's say you're coming to me and you're a potential client, for instance, or somebody who wants to be a part of what I do. You probably come from a background of somebody who has struggled to make a living being a creator or being a creative. You're probably somebody, and that could be any measure of success. You could be a millionaire who has struggled really hard to stay afloat as a creative and as a creator, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. You could also be somebody who's struggling financially to be somebody who is fully in their creative purpose. Perhaps you've lost your sense of purpose. You don't know what direction you need to go in and where you're headed and what you're even here for. You're also somebody who has likely, just like me, come from an institutional religion that has taught you and told you and made you believe that everything that is holy and righteous is something that has to be earned through that institution. And I would allow you to see that, in fact, that is not true. That for you, you have the right to see yourself as holy and righteous and pure, just the way you are. And for you to see sin, and for you to see forgiveness, and for you to see atonement and redemption in a completely new way. And that can all be done through creativity. So as you see, there's a lot that can be done for your creative purpose using spirituality. And there's a lot that we could do for your spiritual purpose that can involve creativity. So for me, to unify the two of those things allows personal, deep liberation for the self in both categories.
I love that. Tim, I have a feeling that you right about now would say, I want to ask a question about something else. You live in Ireland, April.
That is exactly the same question that I was going to ask, actually.
I'll let you ask it. Go ahead.
No. Well, you've asked it now, haven't you? It's like, how did you end up in Ireland, and what was it like going from the US to Ireland, and what the differences have you noticed? It's a terrible multi-part question. Just how did you end up in Ireland?
Do you want the short answer or the not a short answer?
Well, how long if it's 2 hours long, then the long answer, then probably we'll have the short one. If it's like 5-10 minutes, then we'll have the long answer.
We'll start with the short answer. My husband is the national coach for the archery team here in Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
And that's very recent. So it wouldn't have been the Tokyo Olympics. You wouldn't have been able to see people that he's worked with, but you would have seen people that he knows. So we're here for that. And I'm here to support my spouse's endeavor in being a professional, coach in the national Olympic circuit. But it was very much a dream of both of our, it was both of our dream to live abroad. My husband's actually a German citizen, so we have the right to live in the EU. And it was, not the best time to live in the United States, still isn't. So it was just time for a big change. Both of us could feel it. And we felt like this would be, we're both really big proponents of seeking adventure. And I think that's what has made us work as a couple, is that we're always up for the next adventure and we're always in it together. And I really have no regrets about this move, but I won't sit here and say that it's been this fantastic fairy tale that a lot of people kind of seem to think that it is. And I recognize a tremendous amount of privilege to be able to do this and be an expat and live abroad and all that entails. I also just really, I almost feel like, to a large degree, I want to be a better minister to the expat community because it's hard. It's its own trauma. It's like a self-induced trauma to remove oneself from everything you've ever known. And it's a good kind of trauma, but it's really tough. It's a tough thing, and it's a beautiful and exciting and scary, and it really forces somebody, including myself, it has really forced me to look inward in a lot of ways. And I'm really happy to be here. I've learned a ton. And I'm really eager now that COVID is starting to maybe sort of calm down a little bit, really eager to connect with people in physical space again.
Yeah. What has been the biggest challenge moving from the US to Ireland? And I have a personal reason for asking this, but what has been your biggest challenge?
I would say I have two answers for that, actually, because it's kind of on two fronts. I don't fit in here. I never will. It does not matter how much I try to blend in and try to integrate. I'm never going to be a local. Like, I'm a permanent tourist is like how I like to put it, because that's the way I'm treated. And it's there's a term for it around here. It's called blow in. It's not a very nice term. I think it sounds really rude, actually. But
what does that mean?
Blow in, it means that you've just blown in with the wind and that you'll blow back out again.
Okay.
And so I'm not deeply rooted. There are people here that have I live on a mountain, and there are people here that are quick to remind me that, there have been people living, that their family's been on this mountain since before my great-grandmother's great-grandmother was born. And so it's tough, because that means I'm a mother. So that means hardship for my child in school, because all of those kids have grown up together. It means that we're always going to stick out. We're always going to be more of a focal point. That I'm kind of an introvert, I'm a friendly introvert, but I'm an introvert. And so we're always going to be more of like a focal point than I care to be. And people are always curious about us and super friendly with us. But I'm never going to have like a lot of core friendships around me like I would have had in Texas, where I grew up. And it's been a loss. It's been a tremendous sense of grief for me to know that it's really difficult to connect with other people in a community where they all know each other. They've known each other forever. The grandparents were best friends, and their grandparents were best friends. So it's been difficult to kind of break into any kind of scene at all, professionally, career-wise, as well as just socially. And then the other hard part is, and I don't know too much about your audience, so I'll dance really delicately around this, but watching the United States from afar is just as traumatic. It is exactly as traumatic as being a part of it. And I know that people think that I've escaped what's going on over there. I haven't. It's still very much a part of my life. All that's going on there. I still have family and friends that are undergoing severe consequences for, what all has happened in the last few years, specifically the last 5 years, and further back than that. But it's been tough to watch that from afar. It's a powerlessness that I hadn't counted on feeling, and I know that other expats such as myself feel the same way. Universally, very removed, yet and helpless at the same time. Very much feeling the hurt and feeling the trauma from afar. It's been hard,
Yeah. What would you say are the biggest cultural differences that you've noticed? Because you're not in Dublin, are you? You're somewhere else you're more country island kind of way. So it's probably massive. But what are the positive and negatives of the culture differences between where you are in Ireland and the US?
I would say that on the positive side, Irish people really are very friendly. They've earned that reputation. It's true. Irish people are extremely friendly. They're willing to help anybody out that needs it. That's a really noticeable thing. Like, very welcoming, very much want everybody to feel good around them. Right. But what has been, I would say, like, one of the negative aspects of the culture is that people tend to be very averse to change.
Yeah.
In Ireland, it takes a lot of effort to get the ball rolling on something. It takes a lot of effort for people to want to make big, wideswept changes. And I know that that's not always true, because Ireland's changed a lot. it's changed a lot, just on a collective level and on a generational level for sure. But it's just really hard to be an instigator of change, like my husband and I both are. We just encounter a lot of frustration with that.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. And the U.S.'s culture, I think what's great about the U.S. culture, U.S. culture is great because there's just so much mobility and there's so much, I feel like people in the United States really push each other to improve and to grow in ways that isn't really what I see here. And there's good and bad with that too, right? Like because a lot of that's very income based. Push yourselves to succeed, push yourselves to get rich or whatever. But there's definitely none of that here. Like this pushing to be better and pushing to be greater, because there's always, in America, there's always that better than, greater than, and it's not about better than myself yesterday or greater than myself yesterday. It's always about like that person over there, that person over there. And in Ireland, there's a bit of resentment toward people who try to like be somebody or do something different. It's called notions. That's they got notions,
tall poppy syndrome is what they call it in Australia, and there's a little bit of it in the UK as well.
Yes.
What is it called, Tim?
Well, in Australia they call it tall poppy syndrome. It's like they don't grow too high compared to all the other poppies.
The same poppy as everyone else.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
I do love poppies, though.
Yeah.
Our friend Chioma is watching in. So what's the difference between Tim and April? Ask both of you. What would you say the difference in culture, the biggest difference in culture between the UK and Ireland?
Well,
and of course, I'm asking from a very American, ignorant place.
Well, I mean, it's difficult to me because I've only ever been to Ireland once. So I'm not really like, I've known Irish.
Same for the UK for me. I've only been to the UK once. Well, I've only been to the United Kingdom, England, Scotland part of the UK once. I've been to Northern Ireland another time. So I've been to the UK twice.
Okay.
But,
yeah. Well, it sounds like, I mean, you just need to go to Wales now, and then you'll have the whole set. So.
I've never been to Scotland, but that's about
okay.
Yeah, I've only been to London and Giant's Causeway. But I'll try to make a sort of educated guess on that. I said educated guess on that. Is that in England? And this may be an urban-rural divide thing too. There seems to be part of that aggressive American nature of like striving for growth and striving to be somebody. There's more of that, I would say, in the UK. That's the impression that I have.
London is not the UK. That's
right.
Sure.
That's why I said like it's more like an urban-rural thing. Yeah, I mean, because like Dublin, you'll find people that are really going for it.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's the end all be all. Something you see less of here, I guess. But yeah, I just don't feel really educated enough to answer that question.
I mean, I suppose that it's a fundamental like issue now in that too many people are making judgments and doing things based on too little data. Like we're all taking people's word for it, or we feel we have to answer a question when actually we don't know in a way.
Yeah.
I know lots of rural England is very different, and even some of the smaller cities are very. It's something I say to them. It surprises Americans how varied Europe is from area to area. Because I'm sure even in Ireland, I mean, I don't know how much you travel to other parts in Ireland.
Quite a bit, actually.
My understanding is that Dublin is quite different from like somewhere like Wexford or Cork.
Vastly
or
different.
Like that.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that's, like you said, London is not London.
No, London's not England.
Unique. I mean, it is, but it's just a very different culture in the major cities. And the difference between Cork and Dublin is enormous, because Cork is a pretty big city, but it's just a different attitude. It's a different vibe.
So it'd be like saying Los Angeles represents America, when we all know that's absolutely not the case. That's,
well, right. And it does represent America, because that's what people see New York and LA, and they think that's what America is, but they don't see Omaha. They don't see
Middle America,
Detroit, or even Dallas,
Yeah, absolutely. So varied. Chioma says Ireland. I think everyone knows everyone. London isn't England. Chioma was someone we interviewed some time ago. She's a youth worker in England, and so she's knows a lot of the youth workers throughout, the spiritual youth leaders, in fact, throughout England. So it's always fun when she pops in and says hi. But April, we're going to close out here, and I want to know where our audience can find you online. Where can they learn more about you and get to know you?
Yeah, that's changing all the time. And I'm actually working with Anita Wong to enhance my online presence. She's amazing. I figured I'd give her a plug here. But for the moment, the best place to find me is on Twitter at the present time. Okay. I have a website, but that is about to completely change. And of course, there's always going to be the most important plug of all, which is to listen to my podcast, which is Creativity is Spirituality. You can find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts, including Anchor, where I record and produce it, as well as Apple and Spotify, the two most popular places to hear it. But if you just want to support me and my work, and you want to see what I'm doing creatively, I would really like to have more Patreon subscribers. And the address for that is patreon.com/AprilKlingMeyer. So patreon.com/April Kling Meyer. And you can learn a whole lot more about what I'm doing behind the scenes that way.
Yeah. I've actually put it in the website notes, which is, if you scan the QR code down there, it'll take you, well, it actually takes you to my website, which says then a link to her website. Yeah. But I need to put your podcast link on there. So send it to me and I'll add it to that blog post page.
Chioma said she's looking forward to listening, April. And to give you a little bit of a plug, April interviews some fascinating leaders in spirituality and creativity. So I highly recommend giving it a listen. It's incredible.
Yeah, a lot of emerging leaders too. Yeah. A lot of people that you haven't heard of that you're about to see all over the place. I would say that's kind of the main kind of guests that I have on there, people that are about to blow up in the spirituality community and creativity too.
I thought you were going to say more blow-ins.
It's okay.
Okay, so thanks very much for being a guest today. And after my crappy joke, I'm going to play the outro. And feel free to hang around and talk to us after the show.
Thanks, April. Thanks, Chioma.
Thanks, Chioma. Thanks,
that was awesome.
Watching the replay.
Bye.
Bye.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Cliche shit, you know.